What happens when a man spends 40 years playing heroes and decides to destroy the myth? August 1991, Alberta, Canada. Clint Eastwood sits in a darkened editing bay watching footage from Unforgiven. The scene shows William Money, the character he plays, standing over a wounded man. The man is begging for water. Money stares down at him with dead eyes and walks away, letting him die slowly in the dirt. Clint watches this moment 3 times. His assistant asks if something is wrong with the take. Clint says nothing. He just sits there in the dark, watching himself become the thing he spent his entire career pretending to be. A killer without mercy, without redemption, without the comfort of being right. This is not Dirty Harry. This is not the man with no name. This is something else entirely. This is the truth Clint had been running from for 40 years, and it terrifies him. To understand why Unforgiven is Clint Eastwood's darkest film, you need to understand what it cost him to make it. Not money, not time. Something deeper, something he can never get back. Clint Eastwood built his career on violence. The westerns, the cop films, the revenge fantasies. Audiences loved watching him shoot bad guys, loved the simplicity of it. Good versus evil. Justice served with a gun. Clean, satisfying, mythic. But Clint knew the truth. He always knew. Violence is not clean. Justice is not simple. And the men who kill, even for the right reasons, carry that weight forever. He read the script for Unforgiven in 1983. David Webb Peoples wrote it as a meditation on aging and violence, a deconstruction of every Western myth Hollywood ever sold. It was brilliant and brutal and honest in ways that made Clint uncomfortable. Most directors would have jumped at it immediately. Clint put it in a drawer. He told people he was not ready yet. But that was not quite true. The truth was, he was afraid of it, afraid of what it would require him to become. For 8 years, the script sat untouched. Clint made other films, played other characters, kept building the legend. But Unforgiven haunted him. It was always there, waiting, demanding something he was not sure he could give. In 1990, Clint turned 60. He looked in the mirror and saw an old man staring back. The lines on his face, the gray in his hair, the weight of all those years. And he realized something that changed everything. He was finally old enough to play William Money. Not as an actor playing a character, as a man who understood what it meant to have killed, to have destroyed lives, to have done terrible things and lived with the consequences. Most people think Unforgiven is dark because of the violence. They are wrong. The violence in Unforgiven is not particularly graphic. Clint deliberately made it ugly and clumsy and slow. No balletic gunfights, no heroic last stands. Just men bleeding and dying in the mud, crying for their mothers, taking minutes or hours to die. But that is not what makes it dark. What makes Unforgiven the darkest film Clint ever made is the honesty. The refusal to offer comfort, redemption, or hope. William Money is a man who spent his youth as a killer. He murdered women and children, committed atrocities he cannot even remember clearly because he was drunk most of the time. Then he met a woman who saved him, gave him a reason to stop, helped him become something resembling human. But she dies before the film begins, and without her, Money is nothing. Just a broke pig farmer who cannot provide for his children, cannot make the farm work, cannot escape the man he used to be. When he takes one last job, one last killing to get money for his kids, he tells himself it is different this time. He has a good reason. He is helping a woman who was brutalized. He is providing for his family. He is still one of the good guys. The film systematically destroys every one of those justifications. The woman who was cut does not want revenge. The man they are hunting is not a monster, just a scared kid who made a mistake. And Money's partner Ned dies horribly because Money dragged him back into this world. By the end, Money has nothing left but rage. He walks into a saloon and murders 5 men, not because it is right, but because he is what he always was. A killer. Cold, efficient, empty. The final scene shows him riding away. Rich, alive, victorious. But there is no triumph in it. Just a man who has proven he cannot change, cannot escape, cannot be redeemed. He will carry those deaths forever, and they mean nothing. Clint shot the film in 42 days. The schedule was brutal, the conditions harsh. Cast and crew worked 14-hour days in heat that made breathing difficult. But Clint drove them forward with quiet, relentless focus. Gene Hackman, playing the sadistic sheriff Little Bill, asked Clint once why he was pushing so hard. The film was good already. They could take more time, make it comfortable. Clint looked at him and said something Hackman never forgot. "If we get comfortable, we will lose it. This film only works if everyone is exhausted, if everyone is raw. That is what money feels. That is what we need to feel." On day 38, they filmed the scene where Money kills Ned's torturer. It is the moment Money stops being human and becomes pure vengeance. He shoots the man, then stands over him, delivering one of the most chilling lines in cinema. He had it coming. Did he? We all have it coming, kid. The crew went silent after that take. They had just watched Clint Eastwood, this icon of American cinema, this symbol of heroism, deliver a line that justified nothing. A line that said, every death is meaningless, every killer is damned, every act of violence just adds to an endless cycle of suffering. Later that night, one of the producers approached Clint. He was worried. The film was too dark, too nihilistic. Audiences would not accept it. They needed something hopeful, some sign that Money had learned something, that his violence had purpose. Clint listened patiently. Then he said 6 words that ended the conversation. The point is, there is no point. Unforgiven premiered in August 1992. The initial response was muted. Critics recognized its craftsmanship, but were unsettled by its coldness. Audiences were confused. They came expecting a Clint Eastwood Western and got something that felt like a funeral. But over time, something shifted. People began to understand what Clint had done. He had taken every Western he ever made, every hero he ever played, and burned it all down. He showed violence as it really is, ugly and stupid and soul-destroying. He showed heroes as they really are, broken men who do terrible things and lie to themselves about why. The film won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. Clint stood on stage holding his Oscar and gave the shortest acceptance speech in history. Thank you. This is for everyone who worked on this film. 20 words. Because what else was there to say? The film spoke for itself, and what it said was not comforting. In the years since, Unforgiven has been called a masterpiece, the greatest Western ever made, the film that ended the genre by telling the truth about it. But none of those descriptions capture why it is Clint's darkest work. It is darkest because it is personal. Because Clint spent 40 years building a mythology around himself as a force of righteous violence. And then he spent 42 days in the Alberta wilderness destroying that mythology completely. William Money is not a character. He is a confession, an admission that every hero Clint ever played was a lie. That violence does not cleanse, justice does not heal, and some men cannot be saved no matter how much they want to be. Other directors have made dark films, films about murder, about despair, about the cruelty of existence. But those films are often made by people examining darkness from a safe distance, looking at monsters they have never been. Clint made Unforgiven from the inside. As a man who spent decades glorifying violence, who made millions teaching audiences that killing can be heroic, who understood intimately how seductive that myth is and how dangerous. The darkness in Unforgiven is not the darkness of horror or tragedy. It is the darkness of truth, the truth that we are what we do, that our actions define us more than our intentions, that there is no washing away blood, no matter how justified we tell ourselves the killing was. There is a moment late in the film where Money, drunk and vicious, tells the Schofield kid about the reality of killing. You take away all they got and all they're ever going to have. The kid, horrified by his first kill, starts to cry. And Money just stares at him with those dead eyes and says, "It is a hell of a thing, killing a man. That line contains the entire film, the entire philosophy Clint was trying to express. Killing is not heroic, it is not redemptive, it is hell, and the men who do it are not elevated by it. They are diminished, broken, lost. Some critics argue that Million Dollar Baby is darker because of its ending, or that Mystic River is darker because of its subject matter. But those films, as brutal as they are, still offer something: love, sacrifice, the dignity of choice. Unforgiven offers nothing. Just a man riding into darkness, carrying a weight he will never put down, having learned that he cannot change, and that perhaps he never really wanted to. Clint never made another Western after Unforgiven. People asked him about it for years. He always gave the same answer: "I said everything I had to say about the West. There is nothing left." That is not quite accurate. The truth is, he could not go back. He had shown the audience the truth about the myth, about the lie he had been selling them. And once you show people that, you cannot pretend it did not happen. In 2019, a journalist asked Clint which of his films he was most proud of. The journalist expected him to say Unforgiven, his masterpiece, his Oscar winner, the film that secured his legacy. Clint thought for a long time. Then he said, "I'm not sure proud is the right word. That film took something from me, something I needed to give, but giving it did not feel good. It felt necessary, like lancing a wound." The journalist asked what he meant. Clint did not elaborate. He just said, "Some films you make because you want to, some you make because you have to." Unforgiven was the second kind. That is why Unforgiven is Clint Eastwood's darkest film. Not because of what is on screen, though that is dark enough, but because of what it cost the man who made it. The mythology he destroyed, the comfortable lies he stripped away, the admission that every hero he ever played was a monster in disguise. He did not make that film to entertain. He made it to confess, to say out loud what he had known quietly for 40 years. That violence destroys everyone it touches, that there are no clean hands, that some of us are damned not for our sins, but for the ones we enjoyed committing. And he made it at 60 years old, when most directors are playing it safe, making crowd pleasers, protecting their legacies. Clint chose to burn his legacy down, to tell the truth even though the truth was ugly, to refuse comfort when comfort was all audiences wanted. That takes a kind of courage most people do not have. Not the courage to face danger, but the courage to face yourself, to admit you were wrong, to show everyone the monster you might have been if circumstances had been slightly different. Clint Eastwood has made other films about darkness, about loss, about death, about the cruelty of fate. But none of them cut as deep as Unforgiven. None of them were as personal. None of them required him to destroy the very foundation of his career and remake himself from the ashes. There is a scene early in the film where Money is trying to mount a horse. He is old, rusty, out of practice. He falls in the mud in front of his children. They laugh, not cruelly, just honestly. And Money lies there in the filth, humiliated, knowing he is about to do something terrible because he has no other way to survive. That scene is not in most Westerns. Heroes do not fall in the mud. Heroes do not fail in front of their children. Heroes do not admit they have no options, no dignity, no way out. But William Money is not a hero. He is a man. And men fall. Men fail. Men do terrible things because they are desperate, or weak, or broken. And Clint Eastwood, at 60 years old, finally had the courage to show that. The legacy of Unforgiven is complicated. It influenced a generation of filmmakers who tried to make grittier, more realistic films. But most of them missed the point. They copied the violence, the darkness, the cynicism. But they did not understand that Unforgiven is not cynical. It is honest. Cynicism says nothing matters. Honesty says everything matters, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Clint has never made a film more honest than Unforgiven. Never again stripped himself that bare. Never again admitted so completely that the heroes he played were lies, and the truth is much harder to bear. That is why it is his darkest film. not because it shows darkness, because it lives there, because it refuses the comfort of light, because it says some things cannot be fixed, some men cannot be saved, and sometimes the best we can hope for is to understand what we have done and live with it. And because at the end, after all the killing, after all the blood, William Money rides away, rich and alive. He wins. He gets the money, saves his kids, survives. But it is the emptiest victory in cinema, because we know what it cost. We know what he became. We know he is not the hero of this story. He is the tragedy. If this story made you think differently about what makes a film dark, about what courage really means, consider staying for more. There are other stories about Clint Eastwood, about the way he sees truth when everyone else wants myth, about the quiet ways he changed cinema. Subscribe if you want to hear them. No pressure, just an invitation.